We are continuing our study in the book of Acts. We worked our way up to chapter 21. And today's scripture involves the temple. So I thought as we start here, we'd like to show some pictures of the temple so we can get the temple in our mind as we talk about these things. So let's just take a peek here. Here is a picture of, again, from the Mount of Olives, looking down on the temple complex. Today, the temple complex, where the temple stood, is the Dome of the Rock. It covers the foundation stone. But the temple complex itself, you can see, dominates the skyline of Jerusalem. This is a picture of the foundation stone. This is the stone that was inside of the Holy of Holies in Solomon's temple. The Ark of the Covenant actually rested on this stone directly. This is the stone that the Jewish called the navel of the world, quote unquote, the world's navel, the creation of the world. They believe Adam was created here. This is the spot where Abraham sacrificed Isaac on this stone, so it's a very important stone. After the Babylonian exile, when the Ark of the Covenant was lost, this stone became the sacred focal point of the Jews. This is what was inside the Holy of Holies, this foundation stone. This is a picture of the temple in Solomon's time, what Solomon's temple would have looked like. Solomon's temple is this edifice here on the top of the mountain. And down below, to the south side of Solomon's temple, this is where Solomon's palace was. These were Solomon's palace buildings, his throne room hall. Back here in the back was Pharaoh's daughter's palace, built on top of Mount Moriah. When Herod undertook to rebuild the temple, he built a huge retaining wall and more than doubled the size of the platform that the temple was built on. He built a huge retaining wall, filled up the surrounding mountain area with stone, and built a platform on top of that. This is a picture, an artist's rendering of Herod's temple after it was completed. This is looking from the south side. This is looking at the back of the temple. The back side of the temple. The temple itself stands, you can see in the middle here, 150 feet high. This entrance here on the bottom center of your screen, this was a main gate into the temple complex, leading up from the Pool of Siloam. This over here is the south gate. Gates entering where the worshipers would enter into the temple. And they went into this gate. The gate was a tunnel. You walk down the tunnel up to a series of stairs, and then you walk upstairs into the temple compound proper. This big area over here on the right with the red roof, this is if I can get my notes, this is named the Royal Stoa. It was a triple colonnade. Inside of this, let's flip to the next picture. You can see this is looking at the front. This is the opposite view from the front of the temple. But this, on the left-hand side here, this is the colonnade in the temple complex itself, where the Sanhedrin would have met. It would have had a balcony or a mezzanine inside of this thing, meeting rooms, and this big colonnaded clerestory windows in the top of this. The temple complex itself, this thing is 36 acres. It dominates the Jewish skyline, as I said before. This is actually a scale model, a 50-to-1 scale model. You're looking at a picture of a 50-to-1 scale model that is at the Jewish Museum. They built this so people could see. Down here in the bottom, this is the Eastern Gate. This is the gate where Christ entered into the temple. The people were waving palm branches, Palm Sundays, what I'm thinking of, when Christ came into the triumphal entry, when Christ came into the temple from the Mount of Olives. The temple itself, if we focus in on the temple, is divided into several sections. This front section here is called the Court of Women. This is a large area. And behind the Court of Women, there is a gate. This is called the Gate Beautiful. This was a very large door, really. 50-foot high door, 20-foot wide door. And this is where the man was laying when Peter and John came into the temple. At the Gate Beautiful laid the lame man who was looking for alms. Peter and John said, "Silver not have I, but what I have, such as I have, I give unto you." And the area of women, all the Jews, any Jewish person would have allowed into this court of women. But to pass through the Gate Beautiful, you would go into the next courtyard, which was the courtyard of men, and only Jewish men were allowed in there. And then if you proceeded further, you can't see from this picture, but there's another courtyard, an inner courtyard called the courtyard of priests. And if you pass through that, then you come to the temple proper, into the temple and the different sanctuaries. So that is the temple. Attached to the temple, on the northwest corner of the temple, is this fortress. This is the Antonia Fortress. Herod was a very shrewd politician and a wonderful builder. And Herod talked the Jewish people, the Jewish nation, into letting him destroy their old temple and build a new temple. He did this by making some promises. He promised that he would have all the material ready on hand before he destroyed the old temple. So the new temple was built very quickly. That's the temple proper was built very quickly, but not the whole structure. It took 80 years for the whole thing to be finished. But part of the deal was that this Antonia Fortress was close to the temple grounds, and the soldiers could look from the fortress directly into the temple precinct. And there was a connecting stairway under this portico that allowed the soldiers to come directly into the temple, into the temple. This large area around the temple was called the Court of the Gentiles, and anyone was allowed in the Court of the Gentiles. But if you look very closely in this picture, you can see that there is a fence, an ornamental stone fence surrounding the temple proper. And that ornamental stone fence had some warning signs that only Jews were allowed past this fence, where only Jews were allowed inside of the fence on the pain of death. And the Romans allowed the Jews to have this rule and maintained it and supported them in putting to death any Gentiles who entered inside of this fence. And that's a little bit about the temple. The temple itself, 150 feet high, 150 feet wide, 150 feet long. It was a large cube. If we look again, I have another picture here of the Court of the Gentiles, just to give us kind of a scale of this. This is a different artist. Gives a picture of the Court of the Gentiles, these large Gate Beautiful. And you can see in this picture, there are these huge candelabras, 75-foot high candelabras that were lit at the Feast of Booths. Each of these candelabras had 4 bowls at the top, which held, each of those bowls held 2.5 gallons of pure olive oil. So it would be 10 gallons of olive oil per candelabra, 40 gallons of olive oil to fill all of those up. And they would have a huge wick. It would run down, and they would light this for this special ceremony. And that was light up the whole city. You could see this from all over the city of Jerusalem. And it was at this ceremony where Christ declared that he was the light of the world during this lighting ceremony. So all very significant. This court area, you can see, can hold many, many people. And so we're going to see, this is where Paul was when the riot broke out. So that's a little bit of background into the temple. Back to the text. So starting in verse 27, and when the 7 days were almost ended, that's what we looked at last week, these men who had a Nazirite vow on them were just almost ready to at the end of their vow. When the 7 days were almost ended, the Jews, which were of Asia, when they saw him in the temple, stirred up all the people and laid hands on him. So, very significantly, these were the Jews that come from Asia. These were the Jews who Paul dealt with when he was in Ephesus and traveled throughout the region of Galatia, which is modern-day Turkey. Paul had been interacting with these Jews. They didn't like Paul, and they came to stir up the people, and they laid hands on him. They took Paul, and they roughly manhandled him. They took him violently. And these Jews, as they grabbed Paul, they cried out, "Men of Israel, help! This is the man that teacheth all men everywhere against the people and the law and this place, and further brought Greeks into the temple also, and has polluted this holy place." All a big pack of lies. Paul didn't bring anyone into the temple. He didn't teach against the people and the law and the holy place. Paul supported, and he was Jewish, and he respected the Jewish customs. But notice that they cried out. They didn't call for the police. They didn't say, "Police come, soldiers come." No, they didn't do any of that. They called out men of Israel. They were trying to start a riot intentionally. And this as you're going to see in the next verse, was staged. Also, this was during the time of Pentecost. Remember, Paul was trying to get back to Jerusalem for Pentecost. So this would have been in the Pentecost festival when the city would have been crowded, the temple would have been crowded, lots of people would be there. So continuing in verse 29, "For they had seen before with him in the city Trophimus, an Ephesian, whom they supposed Paul had brought into the temple." So they didn't have any proof of this, but they supposed Paul brought him into the temple. And they would have recognized Trophimus as a being from Asia. And so they had seen him before. They had seen him in the city and probably had made a plan, had made some premeditated arrangements to arrest Paul, to put him to death. As we're going to see, they tried to kill him. So they had been thinking about this and laid their plans when they saw him in the temple. And all the city was moved, and the people ran together, and they took Paul and drew him out of the temple, and forthwith the doors were shut. So Paul was probably in the court of women in this area here of the temple, and they drew him out of the court of women. They probably shut this front door here and put him, and he was in this big area of the Gentiles where the riot was going on when this all occurred. They drew him out and shut the doors of the temple. And as they went about to kill him, they were aiming to kill Paul. Tidings came unto the chief captain of the band that all of Jerusalem was in uproar. So they're ready to kill Paul. Tidings came over here to the fortress, this Antonia fortress, and let's see what happened. The chief captain of the band. So this would have been the base commander, the tribune who was responsible for this garrison. And this was a high-ranking Roman soldier, would have been equivalent of today's colonel, roughly, of the colonel of today. Heard that all Jerusalem was in an uproar. The colonel, or the tribune, immediately took soldiers and centurions and ran down unto them. And when they saw the chief captain and the soldiers, they left beating of Paul. So when the commander heard this, he recognized this for the very dangerous situation that it was. Nothing good can come out of a riot in the city that he is in charge of, that his responsibility is to maintain peace and order. And so if a riot breaks out, he could be demoted, he could have been flogged, he could have brought disgrace on his family, disgrace on himself. He could have been brought up as a court-martialed for negligence, dereliction of duty. He could have been executed. Lots of bad things could happen if a riot breaks out in his city. He's there to take charge of the city. And so when he heard of this, he did not fool around. He took the soldiers and centurions. Now, centurions would be equivalent of a captain in our army. Centurion was responsible for 100 soldiers. So the fact that he has multiple centurions, he could have had possibly 200 or 300 soldiers with him. The tribune went down to reestablish order. He wasn't fooling around. And when they saw the chief captain and the soldiers, they left off beating Paul. The King James, in a very pithy statement, captures the drama, the essence of this moment. Nobody wanted to tangle around with the Roman centurions. Nobody wanted to get into a fight with the Roman guard there. And so they left off beating Paul. They all kind of backed off. The commander takes charge of the situation swiftly and decisively. And we're going to learn later that his name was Claudius Lysias, the tribune who was in charge of this. And the chief captain came near and took him, that's Paul, and commanded him to be bound with 2 chains, and demanded who he was and what he had done. So this 2 chains brings the idea that he was bound hand and foot. They weren't taking any chances. They weren't gambling with this. They locked him up, demanded who he was and what he had done. And some cried one thing, some another among the multitude. And when he could not know for certainty for the tumult, he commanded him to be carried into the castle. So the commander, the tribune, he was trying to get the story out of the people. Why are you beating him up? Why are you trying to kill him? What is going on? He didn't understand that the tribune was trying to make sense of this mob. And when he came upon the stairs, so it was that he was born of the soldiers for the violence of the people. So back to our picture. So they had carried Paul, they bound him and carried Paul to the fortress. And they were preparing to enter the fortress. And apparently there are stairs somewhere that we can't see in this picture, that they were leading Paul into this fortress. Then he was born of the soldiers. He was carried by the soldiers for the violence of the people. For the multitude of the people followed after, crying, "Away with him." And where have we heard that before? This is what they were crying when they asked if they wanted to release Jesus or Barabbas. They cried, "Away with him," or "Away with Jesus." So now they're saying the same thing for Paul, crying, "Away with him." And as Paul was to be led into the castle, he said unto the chief captain, "May I speak unto thee?" And the chief captain, who said, "Canst thou speak Greek?" So the tribune was very surprised when he heard Paul's speech. So the tribune may have been expected some uneducated peasant, but as soon as he heard Paul speak, he realized that Paul was an educated man, speaking in classical Greek, highly trained orator. And so this got the captain's attention. This instantly changed the perspective of the captain, and the captain realized that he had mistook his prisoner. He didn't understand who he was, who he was dealing with, until Paul spoke. It would be like you go into a riot and you grab the person in the center of the riot. He comes out and he speaks like a college professor. He speaks in this polished language. Now the officer then asked him, "Art not thou that Egyptian which before these days made us an uproar and led us out into the wilderness, 4,000 men that were murderers?" So the tribune had this preconceived notion that Paul was an outlaw, someone that they had been looking for. This Egyptian. This Egyptian was we learn about from Josephus, who described this Egyptian as a Jew who lived in Egypt, and the account is that he came to Jerusalem saying that he was a prophet, and he advised the multitudes that he would go down and destroy the walls of Jerusalem and let them into the city and kick the Romans out of the city. This is what this prophet, this Egyptian, had said. And the tribune got word of it and went out into the wilderness, took forces out into the wilderness, and captured some of these men, marched by force against them, killed 400 of them, took 200 alive, but the ringleader escaped. They didn't know where he was. So the tribune thought that Paul may have been this Egyptian leader that led out of the wilderness 4,000 men. But Paul said, "I am a man which am a Jew of Tarsus, a city in Cilicia, a citizen of no mean city, and I beseech thee, suffer me to speak unto the people." So not only can Paul speak fluent Greek, he also is a citizen of Tarsus. Now, Tarsus was a very prominent city in the ancient world. It rivaled Alexander as a place of learning, a city of prominence. It was a free city, meaning that the Roman authorities let it govern itself. The people who were born in the city were Roman citizens. So Paul had his citizenship, being born in Tarsus, entitled him to Roman citizenship. And it was a very prominent city. So this, plus Paul's demeanor and his speech, persuaded the tribune to let him speak. And when he had given him license, so the tribune recognized who Paul was, that he wasn't an ordinary rabble-rouser, that he was a scholar, and he agreed to let Paul speak. And we've given him license. Paul stood on the stairs and beckoned with the hand unto the people. So Paul, moved his hands in a quieting motion to calm down the crowd. And when there was made a great silence, he spake unto them in the Hebrew tongue. And so Paul gets the crowd's attention, and he spoke unto them. And Lord willing, next week we will hear what Paul has to say.